Ruth and I have been married 53 years. And I just wonder, I reckon there are couples here who have been married longer than that. Anybody been married longer than 53 years? Oh, a few. Yeah, hands up at the back. Yeah, well done. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, you know, with a wedding, a marriage. But, you know, one of the casualties of lockdown and of the pandemic has been weddings. And we know that in the first lockdown, weddings were cancelled. And many couples went through a lot of anguish during that time. Some of them had their weddings cancelled at short notice. And they had to either think, do we postpone them or what do we do? And then there were sort of a very few. And I remember Harry having a wedding here with 6 people in it. 6. And just a very small amount of people. And then it moved on to 30. And couples had to decide, do we go with a small wedding or do we actually postpone it? And some found that when they postponed their wedding, actually they had to postpone it again. And so some poor couples have had to postpone their weddings twice. And it's been a tough time for couples. Thankfully, they're back to full numbers now, and those getting married in this church this year will be able to have the numbers they choose. But of course, none of these problems were for the wedding in Cana. And that's what we're looking at this morning, the wedding in John's Gospel that Jesus attended. And you know, we sometimes forget that Jesus had a life before he was 30. You know, he started his ministry when he was 30, but he had 30 years. And he had 30 years of living in a family, and he would have had an extended family, he had friends, he went to work in the carpenter's shop. And, you know, I reckon he went to a few weddings. Quite sure he did. And as I read this passage, it made me think, maybe this was a family wedding. Because Mary was actually there in the wedding as a guest, and Jesus. And weddings in those days were huge, big occasions that went on for several days. And there would have been a lot of people invited. And they probably said to Jesus, bring a few friends if you'd like. And so the disciples came along. Now, one of the things we really enjoy about a wedding is some nice food. Yes? Yeah, some nice food and some nice drink, and that was just the same for Jesus' day. And it was really important that there was plenty of food and plenty of drink. But there wouldn't have been the soft drinks that we have on offer today, because in those days the water was not clean enough to drink. And so everybody, every day, drank wine. And it would have been a very poor quality wine. So when people were going to a wedding, they expected a really lovely wine. So let's see what happened at that wedding. And it's John chapter 2. On the 3rd day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My time has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from. though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." This is the first of his miraculous signs Jesus performed in Cana of Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. Now, when I read this, it struck me that John wrote it, and he just gave us the bare facts. It was given in a very, very clear way, but there was no emotion there. And it's up to the reader to look more closely at what really happened. Everything was going well. Plenty of food, plenty of drink, everybody enjoying themselves. And then Jesus and his mother and his disciples became aware that things were not quite right in the kitchen, and they slipped out. Now, we mustn't underestimate what was going on in there. There would have been total panic, total noise, shouting, blaming. Who didn't order enough wine? You can imagine it, can't you? Absolutely chaos. What do we do now? We have run out of wine. And this would have been a real indication for the family. This couple's parents would have, the bride's parents would have paid for this wedding and provided it would have been a real slur on their reputation to run out of wine. Their reputation and their reputation as generous would have been damaged. And Mary says to Jesus, quite simply, they've run out of wine. Now, when I read this, it struck me that here we see the humanity of Jesus and the divinity of Jesus. Because Jesus says, "My time has not yet come." Now, he's been baptized. He's gone into the wilderness. This is the beginning of his ministry. And Jesus says, "My time has not yet come." And I reckon that Jesus was just saying, "Oh, not yet. Not yet." I wonder if you've said that to God. Not yet. When he asks you to do something, when he's challenging you to a deeper commitment. Not yet, Lord. Wait till the children have grown up. Wait till I've got my life in order. Then I'll commit myself. Not yet. And we're all guilty of it at times. God gives us that nudge that I mentioned last week. And we say, "Oh, not yet, Lord. No, not yet. Wait." And in that moment, it seems that Jesus just held back. But Mary says to the servants, "Do what he tells you." And it really struck me about Mary here. Jesus has not, this is his first miracle. He has not performed a miracle before this. And so what Mary was saying was definitely Spirit-led. She had the faith and the trust in God that there would be a miracle. She believed. She trusted completely. She believed that her son who was the Son of God, could perform this miracle. And Jesus says to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." Now, these jars were huge. It says here that each jar held 20 to 30 gallons. That's in old money, 75 to 115 litres. That is a lot of water. And Jesus wasn't in control. He wasn't the boss in that kitchen. And Michelle knows that, if it's the boss in the kitchen, what they say goes. And, interrupt, don't get in the way, you know. And yet there was something about Jesus that the chefs and the servants recognized. Here was someone who was speaking with authority. And they do it. They obey. They fill the jars with water. And they would have to move quickly. The wine had run out. There would have been panic. Come on, quick, get the water, fill it. But you can imagine under their breath, they're saying, what on earth are we doing? What are we doing? Filling these jars with water. What does he think he's saying? What's he think we are doing? And yet they do it. And you know, there are times in our lives when God asks us to do something and we don't understand why, and we can't see the way ahead, but we say, okay, Lord, I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to say yes. And I pray that for you. Maybe there's somebody here this morning who's at a crossroads and thinks, you know, God wants me to do something, maybe a deeper commitment, or maybe a first commitment. And you're holding back. And I just want to say, don't hold back. Don't say no. Don't say wait. But take that step and say yes and obey. And then the moment comes, doesn't it? The amazing moment comes when they draw out what they thought was water into the wine glasses, into the wine jugs to take to the guests. And it's wine. But it's not any old wine. It is the most amazing, sparkling red wine. It's your 50-pounder bottle wine. Anybody drank 50-pounder bottle wine? No. The most amazing wine you could drink. Because the master of ceremonies tries it. And he says, this is amazing wine. How amazing. And he says to the family, you know, most families, they serve the best first, and then when people have had a bit too much to drink, they sing they provide them with the lesser quality wine. You saved the best to the last. This was even better than what the families had provided for that wedding. So what do we learn from this? We learn something quite amazing to me, that God loves us so much that he cares about every detail of our lives. He cared. God cared about this couple, this family who were providing this amazing wedding. He cared that the wine was running out. And he cares for each one of us. He loves each one of us that much. That's amazing. And he's actually concerned with every detail of our lives. Don't ever think that, you know, being a Christian is about just being what happens here in this building on a Sunday. When you go out through that door, Jesus is still with you. He doesn't stop at the door and say, right, see you next week. He's with you every single moment of the day. And he cares about you. And he cares about the worries that you have and the struggles that you have and the crises that you meet each week. And I wonder what happens when you hit a crisis, when something goes wrong, when something happens at work, when something happens in the home or with a relationship. Who do you turn to first? Do you muddle on? Do you seek your family? All these things are good, but if we just turn to God first, he needs to be our first port of call, because he is there with us in these crises. We can rely on him completely. He will never let us down. And when we run out of our own resources, as we often do, then he's there. He's there with us, and we do not need to be fearful. And you know, what struck me about this was that if we trust and we obey, we see miracles. And I reckon that God is performing miracles in our lives day by day, but we miss them. Because we say, oh, well, it was just, coincidence. And we explain away God's miracles. And God is there performing miracles every day in your life and in my life. If we trust, if we obey what he's asking us to do, if we say, yes, Jesus, there will be miracles. There will be. But Jesus was actually seeing this wedding and this miracle in something even deeper. There was a message here that he wanted people to hear. What he was saying was, I have come to come against the water of Judaism with its rules and its regulations that actually kept people in a straitjacket. I have come with the wine of the gospel, the new wine of the gospel. And it's for all people. It's not just for Jews, it's for everyone. Throughout the world, it's there. That was what Jesus was saying through this miracle. And that gospel message is for all people. And it's for people way outside the church. It's for people on the edge of society. It's for people in prison, as Pam was sharing. It's for people who are lost, who are poor, who are homeless, who are at the end of their tether. It's for the people in this country and for throughout the world. And the church in this, we keep being reminded, don't we, that the church in the West is declining and numbers are going down. But churches throughout the world are growing. Let's not think that the Christian church is dying. It's not. There are many countries where Christianity is just growing amazingly. And God's people are seeing amazing things. Miracles. Because they expect miracles. In the African countries, they expect miracles. And they see miracles. This is the wine. This is the wine of the gospel. Jesus said, didn't he, I have come to give you life abundantly. Abundantly. And it's the life that Pam was sharing about, that life of love and of forgiveness and of eternal life. Eternal life. When we will be with Jesus forever. That is the wine of the gospel. And finally, Jesus often referred to heaven as a banquet, as a great banquet, a wonderful banquet. And there's a wonderful prophecy in the book of Isaiah, and it's chapter 25 if you want to look it up at home. And it says, there will be a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats, and the finest of wines. What a prospect, Jesus is saying. That one day there is going to be the most amazing banquet. And each of us are on that journey. And if we journey with faith and trust and obedience to God, we will journey to that amazing banquet. But we must never forget to invite people to join that journey. We need to be ready to invite people to the journey. Read this wedding when you get home. It's an amazing, amazing miracle. And I reckon as the servants and all those there and the disciples as well would have been blown out their minds to see what Jesus can do. And it would have spread. Because when a miracle like that takes place, people took. Can you imagine it happening in this church? It would spread into Thornton. But remember that Jesus is performing miracles. And let's be ready to share those miracles with those whom we meet. So let's pray. Father God, we want to thank you that you are the most amazing God, amazing Father to each one of us. We thank you for your amazing love and your provision to us, that you are there with us in every part of our lives. We thank you and we praise you. And we pray, O Lord, that you will lead us on our journey, that you will go ahead of us so that we can follow you. Give us the courage, Lord, the courage to follow with faith and obedience, trusting in you. And we thank you for the promise that one day we will be part of that amazing banquet in heaven. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. And we're going to continue in our prayers and our prayers for others. And I want us to think of it a little differently this morning. I want to think of you to think of our prayers as circles. And it's going to be a time when you will have silence and your opportunity to pray silently. And in those circles, we will place those we want to pray for. So let's pray. In the first circle, there are people closest to us, our family, our friends, the people that we know well, their strengths and their struggles, their enjoyments and their special needs. So in the silence, let's silently pray for those who are part of our families and the needs they represent. And then the circle spreads, and we have a second circle. And these are people that maybe you go to work with, go out with sometimes, distant members of the family, neighbors, friends from a while ago. There are many needs within this circle. Let us remember them and pray for them. And the circle spreads again, and we look at the third and fourth circles, and these are people we don't know very well. You see them at the school gate, in the shops, when you're walking, in the pub. Hundreds of people that we can't pray for them individually. We don't know their needs, but they're known to God. Let them be washed by these circles of prayer. And the circles spread out, and we bring our church family into that circle. Those who are sick, bereaved, in trouble, struggling with their faith. Just pray for anyone you know personally. And then the circles spread right out. They reach the end of the pond. One after another, they lap against the banks. Our prayers extend to the ends of the earth, for all God's creation is the object of his mercy. Our prayer is an act of love for the world. Let us delight to encompass all things within the circle of God's extraordinary care and keeping. And in these far circles, hold everything in the love of the Father. It may be a particular country, a particular situation in the world that's on your heart this morning that you've heard about in the news or read about. Let's lift those up to God. Lord God, our Father, our prayer this morning is a small pebble thrown into a large expanse of need. We thank you that your love is greater still, and we entrust every circle of our prayers to your generous mercy and grace. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.